Our top story amid global Omicron alert, that's the new variant of COVID that's emerged. The central government has issued new rules for international travellers which are effective from midnight. That's midnight last night. Passengers from at-risk countries will now be tested for COVID on arrival and can't leave the airport till their RT-PCR tests are available. And if found negative, they'll undergo a 7-day home quarantine and be retested on the 8th day. Passengers are being advised to prepare to wait at the airports till their results are out.
International airports around the country lining up chairs, preparing to test hundreds of passengers at a time, starting midnight. No passenger can leave until their RT-PCR test result is out, which can take up to 4 to 6 hours. Anybody who tests positive will be shifted to hospitals and their samples sent for genome testing for Omicron. And the rest will be sent for a mandatory 7-day home quarantine in Mumbai.
High risk कंट्री के है RT-PCR पॉजिटिव भी आएगी तो जीनोम सीक्वेंस की भी टेस्ट होगी. ओमिक्रॉन का जो डर लग रहा है वो होना नहीं चाहिए. हर एक पैसेंजर सेल्फ डिक्लेरेशन देगा कि वो कौन से कनेक्टिविटी कंट्री में जाके आए हैं.
Chief Ministers of Delhi and Maharashtra, which have India's two biggest airports, have asked the centre to ban international flights.
भगवान करे कि ओमिक्रॉन वायरस इंडिया में ना आए. अगर वो आता है तो एक जिम्मेदार सरकार होने के नाते हमारा फर्ज है कि हम अपनी सारी तैयारियां पूरी कर लें. मैंने सभी विभागों के जो भी संबंधित विभाग हैं उनके साथ मीटिंग की और उससे निपटने के लिए जो तैयारियां करने की जरूरत है उनका जायजा लिया.
In Delhi, COVID positive passengers will be brought here to LNJP hospital, now designated for Omicron cases.
We have made special preparation. We have had the separate isolation ward, treatment ward, and at the same time we are training our staff to handle with such the cases. We have lot of international travelers, so if any cases are referred to us to the Loknayak, we can handle such cases, we can isolate them, we can treat them, we can do the gene sequencing. Our hospital is competent enough to deal with such different type of viruses.
Delhi is beefing up health infrastructure, 63,000 beds, creating a 2-month buffer stock of essential medicines, a storage capacity of 442 metric tons of oxygen, 3 refilling plants that can refill 2,900 metric tons of oxygen. The centre has advised states to allow physical visits by state officials to homes of passengers from at-risk countries for effective home isolation, and to implement emergency COVID response package with focus on rural areas and children, and early implementation of sanction, oxygen plants and cylinders, drugs, etc. The centre has also said that Omicron variant can be detected by both RT-PCR and rapid antigen tests.
The emergence of Omicron variant of COVID-19 has come out as a major challenge to the entire world and a grim reminder that the virus is still present and a threat to the entire humanity. And while the healthcare workers are working on war footing to prevent another wave of COVID-19 in the country, it is also a responsibility of the public to adhere to COVID-appropriate behavior. With camera person Sushil Rathi and colleague Parimal Kumar Sinha, I'm Akshay Dongre for NDTV.
Now, Vishnu Shom has details on how in some cases the new travel rules will end up being a nearly 24-hour journey for some passengers from Europe. The new rules have come into effect since midnight.
Once you do arrive at Delhi, for example, get set for a 6-hour wait because you will need an RT-PCR test along with hundreds of passengers who arrive with you from nations deemed at risk. This includes major destinations in Europe, for example, the United Kingdom. Now, passengers from these countries must get a compulsory RT-PCR test once they arrive. You cannot exit the airport unless the result shows that you're COVID negative. Now, it will take about 6 hours for these results to be processed. Between 400 and 500 tests can presently be processed every hour at Delhi airport. You'll be put in a special holding area, socially distanced, but hundreds of passengers nearby, that's a big concern. So, let's put this in perspective. How long will a journey take? Consider this. An average direct flight from Europe to Delhi, which normally takes 8.5 hours, could take up to 17 hours if you include the time you need to spend before departure, the time you need to spend after arrival in Delhi, including customs and immigration. If you take a connecting flight, as so many do, then an 8.5-hour flight could end up being a 19.5-hour journey if you spend the time spent in transit plus customs and immigration and of course the test. And finally, if you've arrived on a flight from Delhi by transiting through another country and still need to take a further connecting flight within India to reach your destination, for example from Delhi if you want to go to Bombay or Kolkata, then you could end up spending nearly 24 hours before getting to your home or your hotel.
All right, but new rules in Maharashtra. The Maharashtra government last night said that all international passengers arriving from at-risk countries will have to undergo a mandatory 7-day institutional quarantine. Sources at Mumbai airport say that the order was to place passengers into compulsory isolation facilities will be implemented immediately. Travellers will be required to pay for the quarantine at the designated hotels, and this after 6 international travellers from at-risk countries tested positive for COVID. Let's go across to Saurabh now for more. And Saurabh, this particular rule, this mandatory quarantine for 7 days will come as a shock to many who've arrived since last night.
Well, yes, it will come as a shock to many, but I did speak to the government authorities and what was the reasoning behind this, because many have questioned that what purpose does it serve to sit at an airport and be stuck with people who may possibly also be carrying the infection. So the reasoning that the government said or the authorities have said is that what the authorities want to prevent is a local spread of a new variant, because that can lead to further problems in management of the pandemic. And the government at this point in Maharashtra wants to avoid any further restrictions, any lockdown or any sort of, rollback of the relaxation that it has announced. They say that they have enough capacity for quarantine, institutional quarantine. And what do they mean by this? Well, they have the jumbo COVID centers which are almost empty because of the low number of cases that have been reported. So those are activated if you want institutional quarantine. Secondly, what they also have is hotels. And there are a lot of hotels near the airport that seem to have offered their sort of premises to, the PMC, and what passengers who are placed in institutional quarantine, who arrive from these countries of concern, will have a choice to go and book at these hotels depending on the amount of money they can afford. Or also they could be sent to one of the institutional quarantine jumbo centers. Now those of course are free of cost. So the government says that they have the capacity to manage the volumes, but it'll be seen when these passengers start arriving. The only point of chaos, they say, could be the place where passengers actually sort of undergo the test, and that 6-hour period at the airport while they are waiting for their results, that is going to be difficult because, almost all flights, international flights, coming, between early morning to late morning and, midnight onwards. So that is something that is going to be a sort of area of concern. But the airport authorities say that they have also made enough arrangements depending on the passenger manifest and the number of passengers they expect from these flights that are coming from countries of concern. But yes, there is chaos expected at the airport, given the fact that a lot of passengers were already in the air or already on their flights when this was announced. But the government says that, we have to, do this to prevent local spreads of the virus, because that then can lead to a whole different proportion of problems. Though many experts say that, perhaps if the virus has to travel, it perhaps in all likelihood already has. But at the same time, the government says we have to take whatever steps we can to sort of prevent a local spread.
All right, Saurabh, yes, quite a shock for those who must have arrived since last night to find out that they now have to be in institutional quarantine. Thanks so much for joining us with those details. Let's talk to Akshay now for the situation in Delhi. And Akshay, in Delhi, it is the RT-PCR test that passengers must undergo, so they have to wait at the airport. And then after that, it's home quarantine for a week, isn't it?
Well, yes, Gargi, clearly the Delhi government didn't want the international flights to begin. Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal has been reiterating that the Prime Minister and the central government should reconsider their decision to resume international flights. However, Delhi government hasn't issued a fresh set of advisory as far as the international travellers are concerned. It is only the central advisory that will be implemented in the national capital as well. Now, at the Indira Gandhi International Airport, there are a large number of international flights that come, and given the number of countries that are in the category of at risk, we can consider a large number of passengers to come here. Now there are certain arrangements that have been made. As far as the capacity of the airport is concerned, they are saying that they can process approximately 500 to 600 RT-PCR tests. However, the result will take approximately 6 to 7 hours to come. So for that period of time, all the passengers coming from the at-risk countries, they will have to wait at a separate area that has been made at the Indira Gandhi International Airport, and after that, if anybody found positive, they will be immediately shifted to LNJP hospital that has been designated as a dedicated Omicron hospital. Now they will be kept in isolation there as well, apart away from other COVID patients too. And their samples will be sent to INSACOG labs for genome sequencing. However, the people who are tested negative even at the airport, they will have to go to a home quarantine for 7 days, and they have to go for another RT-PCR test on the 8th day. Given the number of days it actually takes for the virus to show symptoms and to in fact be visible as far as even the RT-PCR test is concerned. After the 8th day, if the sample is again tested negative, then the passengers will have to go for a self-monitoring for the next 8 days. This is as far as the at-risk nations are concerned, and those who are not coming from at-risk nations, who are international travelers, there will be a random sampling of 5% of the passengers. They will be identified and they will be tested for RT-PCR, and all of this cost for testing and identification will be borne by the Ministry of Civil Aviation. So that is some sort of respite, and when we compare the rules in the national capital with the rules that have been just the Saurav has been speaking about, clearly there is some respite for passengers because they don't have to go to a mandatory institutional quarantine. However, everybody is on their toes as far as the preparations are concerned, given the scare Omicron has in the entire world. So yes, there will be certain strict guidelines that will be implemented at least for next couple of weeks. Gargi?
Right, and hope the situation at the airport is, well handled and there's no chaos there. Thanks so much, Akshay, for joining us with that. And let's now take a look at Chennai. The airport has earmarked the ground floor of its T4 terminal to accommodate incoming international passengers from at-risk countries, as they'll have to wait for the results of their RT-PCR test. Let's go across to Sam now for more. And Sam, tell us more about, what has the situation been like since midnight?
Well, Gargi, we understand around 70 passengers have been shortlisted or do require this kind of a mandatory testing because they've come from the category of at-risk countries. And today is not the turn for flights from, say, UK. So far they say around 9 flights have landed. A few more are expected in the next couple of hours. And the space they have earmarked for this, at the moment they say it's very comfortable because they have arranged space for around 500 passengers to wait there in that hall at any point in time. And they can book the online, they can book the testing online either before departure or after they arrive at the airport. It could take around 5 to 6 hours. The airport says besides the regular facilities, the waiting passengers will also have access to food and beverages there and also some television entertainment besides forex services nearby. But at the moment it's fine, but authorities do not expect major chaos as they witnessed in the month of September when international flights resumed. At that time, all the passengers were required to take tests. That led to chaos, and at that time, officials also blamed on bunching of flights because they all came together around the same time. This time the same situation prevails, but since the testing requirement is only for people from these at-risk countries, they hope that the existing arrangement would be fine. And in case of passengers who are tested positive, they were tied up with locations there for immediate mandatory isolation and to be under quarantine. And passengers, the moment they receive a negative certificate, they are free to exit the airport. They don't have to wait for their family members or the results for other passengers. And international passengers who may have been at-risk countries, particularly as a transit passenger, they are exempted from testing as long as they had spent time only at the immigration and not they did not enter the country. So at the moment, the situation is fine. In another 20-30 minutes, we'll be at the airport and we'll be able to share with you what really happens there in the next bulletin, Gargi.
All right, Sam, thanks so much for joining us with that. So for the moment, it's under control there at the Chennai airport. Now remember, the only way to identify this variant, even if you test positive, is through genomic sequencing, and the activity at Mumbai's only genome sequencing laboratory has picked up amidst these concerns over the new variant that has been detected in South Africa. Mumbai has alerted healthcare staff, and the laboratory is functioning at full capacity to detect the new variant amongst those samples found positive, especially from those arriving from at-risk countries. Saurabh Gupta reports.
The pandemic has been around since March 2020, but how does one find out which variant is causing havoc, or which variant is spreading faster, or if there's mutation in the coronavirus since it caused the pandemic in the beginning of March 2020? Now, genome sequencing is the only way to figure out variants, and Mumbai has got its own genome sequencing lab. This was after the pandemic. As you can see, it was inaugurated by the Chief Minister on the 4th of August 2021. And now, of course, the lab is functioning, but it's come into focus now because of the new variant that has been discovered. Tell us a little bit about these machines and how your team here works.
This is a new generation sequencing we have with us.
This is the machine.
Yeah, this is the machine. These two machines we have with us. We at a time we can process up to 376 samples for SARS-CoV-2 sequencing in this. Genome sequencing will tell us all the genes which are present in a particular virus or particular strain of the virus which we are sequencing. So all the genes, whether it is RDRP, so any changes or any mutations are present that can be identified by the genome sequencing.
In the current Omicron variant, what is this S gene that everybody is talking about? What is this S gene that you're looking for?
Basically, when you look at the COVID virus, the structure of the COVID virus, there are various antigens which are present and various genes which are present. One of which is basically the S gene. We have like similarly RDRP genes are there, N gene is there, ORF and AB genes are there. So when we look at this S gene, there are a lot of mutations which are present in the Omicron, and not only the mutations are present, the RT-PCR kits with the S gene are not able to detect this virus. Right. But fortunately in Mumbai and Maharashtra, the RT-PCR kits that we are using do not detect the S gene. So the chances of missing out the Omicron by the routine RT-PCR test is less in our setup.
Genome sequencing is perhaps one of the most important methods of fighting the pandemic, because that gives us an idea of the strengths and the nature of the virus that we are battling. In Mumbai, with camera person Sanjay Mandal, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
Welcome back. Now, with the new variant being reported in various parts of the world amid talk of a booster shot of the vaccine, the CEO of the Serum Institute of India, Adar Poonawalla, told NDTV that if a booster dose is needed, the company has plenty of stock. He also said that an Omicron-specific booster shot is also possible.
That's also the hope with Omicron, which is the latest variant of concern. We don't know how mild or severe it's going to be. The initial reports are that, it's not creating severe illness, but it's still too early to conclude on that. But today's vaccines that are licensed, let me just share that with everyone, does provide quite a bit of broad protection against all these variants. Now, specifically how effective Covishield is for this variant, like we had concluded, the 81% figure you mentioned for the Delta variant. Now for Omicron, the tests are on, and in about 2-3 weeks time, we will know at least the lab tests of neutralizing antibodies, etc., to know and get an idea of how good the existing Covishield vaccine is against that. Having said that, the Oxford scientists are still working on, and we hopefully will launch, if required, in 6 months, a new vaccine, which is directly a vaccine which could be a booster dose, which is specifically targeting the Omicron and other variants found on that continent.
Time for a break. On the other side, we speak to Captain Amrinder Singh on his future plans. Welcome back. Some good news for India's economy. India's GDP grew by 8.4% during the July-September quarter of 2021-22. The growth, though not so high as the stupendous 20.1% jump seen in the June quarter of the current fiscal, is still in the positive territory for the fourth consecutive quarter. And the spurt in economic growth during the second quarter of the current financial year was mainly due to the positive growth seen in key sectors like agriculture, mining, manufacturing, electricity and water supply, transport, communications and real estate. A look now at the Parliament session. On the second day of the winter session of Parliament, the opposition walked out in the upper house after Rajya Sabha Chairman Venkaiah Naidu said that the suspension of 12 opposition MPs will not be revoked as they had shown no remorse. But in the opposition meeting to decide on boycotting Rajya Sabha proceedings, Trinamool Congress and Samajwadi Party were absent. Where does this leave the opposition unity? Arvind Gunasekhar reports.
Opposition parties boycotted the proceedings in Rajya Sabha and protested at the Gandhi statue over the suspension of 12 opposition MPs after the Rajya Sabha chairman Venkaiah Naidu refused to revoke the suspension.
If the members who have committed this sacrilege against the House, they have not expressed any remorse, I don't think the appeal of the leader of opposition is worth considering. I am not considering it at all. Motion was moved, it was approved, action is taken, it is final.
ये जो अनडेमोक्रेटिक और ऑटोक्रेटिक बिहेवियर है, हमने सब मिलके वॉकआउट करने का डिसीजन लिया, वो यूनाइटेडली हमने किया है.
The government is adamant. If there's no apology, the suspensions stay for the entire session.
जिन लोगों ने हाउस में चेयर की तरफ अटैक किया, लेडी मार्शल्स को अटैक किया, पेपर्स फेंके, कॉर्डन तोड़ने की कोशिश की, जिन 12 सांसदों के नाम उन 11 तारीख की घटनाओं में दिखाई दिए, उन सब के ऊपर कार्रवाई करने की हमने अनुरोध किया. सदन के सामने मोशन प्रस्तुत हुआ, सदन ने मोशन को स्वीकार किया.
A meeting of 16 opposition parties, including the TRS, Aam Aadmi Party, Shiv Sena and chaired by the Congress, took the decision to boycott the Rajya Sabha. Trinamool Congress and Samajwadi Party kept away from the opposition meet attended by Rahul Gandhi. The TRS, in government in Telangana, is fighting the BJP there.
We are those who have defeated BJP. And BJP lost its deposit in all the places where they have contested against us. All opposition is all one. We are going to oppose this BJP government.
After staying away from opposition meet chaired by the Congress, TMC MPs joined the protest. The party has been taking on many Congress leaders and legislators recently.
जो 12 MP को सस्पेंड किया गया है, उसके खिलाफ में हम लोग आवाज उठा रहे हैं. हम लोग पूरे ऑपोजिशन के साथ हैं, लेकिन अपनी राह खुद चलेंगे.
Opposition parties led by Congress to meet again on Wednesday morning to decide on the future course of action as the government has refused to revoke the suspension of 12 MPs. While Trinamool Congress will also protest against the suspension, but the party has decided to stay away from any of the meetings chaired by the Congress party. With camera person Pooja Arya, this is Arvind Gunasekhar for NDTV.
Now, Captain Amrinder Singh, who has launched his own party after leaving the Congress, told NDTV his only condition for an alliance with the BJP was the resolution of the farmers' agitation. He said that a formal alliance with the BJP can be worked on now that the 3 contentious farm bills have been repealed.
Now you, from what you just said, because you said, you'll also have to keep some seats for the BJP, does that mean, do we assume by that, Captain, that the tie-up with the BJP has been formalized? And if so, why hasn't it been announced?
No, because I was the one who told them that we will only come together once the farmer agitation is over. That was my first, one and only condition, that you finish the farmer agitation first and then we'll get together. And so that is now hopefully over. The 3 bills have been repealed and the other things they want, I think, will be resolved in the next couple of days. So once that is done, then we are open. And I have already met the Home Minister and I have already discussed this issue with him. And I told him that this was the one condition. And then he is quite happy to discuss this issue with me. And I also spoke to the Prime Minister on this. And I also told him that we are all set to work with you. Now, what numbers will be there, I don't know. I can't say now. But we have done a thorough check on our own as to where the BJP is strong, where we are strong, where Mr. Deensa is strong, and then we'll sit across the table and decide on that.
Okay, so there's no hitch or hold up or a problem with the alliance?
No, not from that angle, no. I'm going to hopefully, I spoke to the BJP president also yesterday, and I'm hoping on Saturday I hope to see him.
On Saturday you hope to see him. Captain, what would you say to the fact, I just interviewed the Chief Minister last week, Charanjit Channi. He said that the BJP is a liability in Punjab, and by as in the captain, hitching your wagon to them, you further sunk your own chances.
We know that's a question of perception. Now that may be Mr. Channi's perception, it's not my perception. I don't think that is the situation at all. Do you know that as of today, our own feedback is that there is a total swing towards the BJP in there, and there's a great deal of Hindu support, which I'm also getting. So, but combined, there are 36% Hindus in Punjab, and we hope to pick a very major chunk, more than the Congress, let me tell you. That is what I want you to note today, so that these figures are always there with you. Okay. And we are going to draw the big chunk. And then you find that the farmers' agitation, I played such a role in it from the angle, not directly with the farmers, but on behalf of the farmers with the government of India. And they all know it. So hopefully we'll get a lot of farmer support in this. I am in fact also making some...
but Captain, certainly the farm laws have been withdrawn, which is of course a huge step. But the farmers are still very much protesting, because now they're saying that they want minimum support price to be legalized. So that agitation is still on.
Not legalized. Mr. Tomar has, you see, you can't legalize it. Legalize it means that you pass a bill in Parliament saying that this will be the MSP. But that's not the way it can be done, because every year your cost of input is going up and up and up. So your MSP will have to go up too. And that is what what the Prime Minister, what they wanted with the PM, as Mr. Tomar has announced, that the Prime Minister will be setting up a committee, and in that committee to discuss the MSP, and farmers wanted that they should become members of that committee. And he has said, yes, we will take you as members of that committee.
The West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee is in Mumbai. She met Maharashtra's Protocol Minister Aditya Thackeray, and she will be meeting Sharad Pawar today, and these meetings are being closely watched for their political significance.
ममता जी आज महाराष्ट्र में आई है, मुंबई में आई है। संजय जी और मेरी उनसे मुलाकात हुई, उनका हमने मुंबई और महाराष्ट्र में स्वागत किया है। पहले से एक दोस्ती रही है। आपको याद होगा 2-3 साल पहले जब ममता जी यहाँ मुंबई में आई थी, तब भी हमने उनसे मुलाकात की थी। और एक दोस्ती का नाता, ये जो नाता है, रिश्ता है, वो अलग है, और उसी को बढ़ाने, और जब मुंबई में आती है तो स्वागत करना स्वाभाविक है, तो इसलिए हम यहाँ आए। मुझे लगता है कि आज एक हमारी जो बैठक है, जो ऐसे ही उनसे मुलाकात करने आए थे, काफी सारे विषयों पे चर्चा हुई।
Now, South Africa's Foreign Ministry has said that a full biosecure environment will be created for the Indian cricket team when it lands there for their series next month, and lauded the BCCI for not pulling out its A team despite the panic caused by the discovery of the Omicron variant. India A started their second unofficial test against South Africa A in Bloemfontein, staying put in the country despite the global trepidation that has followed the Omicron variant's discovery. Hello and welcome. You're watching Good Morning India. I'm Gargi Rawat. Our top story. The Maharashtra government has announced that all international passengers arriving from at-risk countries will have to undergo a mandatory 7-day institutional quarantine. Now remember, since midnight last night, rules have changed for international passengers arriving from at-risk countries. They have to get tested for COVID, but in other airports in Delhi, etc., they can then leave the airport after testing negative for COVID. However, in Maharashtra, they will have to go in for institutional quarantine, and Mumbai airport sources have said that the order to place passengers into compulsory isolation facilities will be implemented immediately. Well, let's go across to Saurabh now from... All right, well, travellers will be required to pay for the quarantine at designated hotels, and this after 6 international travellers had tested positive for COVID in Maharashtra. So Maharashtra taking no chances there. Let's go across to Saurabh now for more details. And Saurabh, this is something that must have come as a shock to many of the international passengers arriving from at-risk countries. But Maharashtra deciding to take this very stringent step because they've had a case in which 6 passengers from at-risk countries tested positive for COVID.
That's right. In fact, we are at the airport and trying to figure out what's going on inside, though access is limited because, obviously they don't allow us to sort of go into the terminal, and also with whatever limited access, what is being given to understand at this point is that there have been international flights that have come in, and those passengers are waiting for the PCR report. Now, they also have to on mandatory institutional quarantine, which means that they will either be put up at hotels or at the quarantine centers that the government has set up. And they'll have a choice, but they'll have to pay out of pocket if they choose to, have their quarantine at, the hotels that have been arranged for by the government. So at this point, there is, of course, a considerable amount of what we're being given to understand, questions from, flyers who've arrived, because many of them were on the flight already when these, restrictions were announced. So that is, of course, one issue that many will face, and they will obviously have to, have undergo these tests, and they will have to wait here till the time their quarantine is complete. So that's one, sort of issue that many will face here at the Mumbai airport.
All right, Saurabh, thanks so much for joining us with all those details. Well, let's now go across to Delhi and Chennai to find out what the situation is like over there with passengers arriving. Remember, the rules changed from midnight. Let's go across to Akshay. And Akshay, the Delhi airport, in fact, has tweeted about how over 1,000 passengers arrived and how, it's been going very smoothly so far.
Well, yes, the airport has tweeted that things have been going smoothly. However, we spoke to a few passengers. They are reporting something somewhat contradictory scenes from inside of the airport. As far as the options for passengers from these at-risk nations are concerned, they have 2 options after coming to the IJ airport. Either they can go for a normal RT-PCR test, which is going to take at least 5 to 6 hours. Now that is in addition to the queuing up, the waiting, getting tested, and the result will take approximately 5 to 6 hours to come. So that is one thing for which passengers will be charged around 500 rupees. And for a rapid PCR test, which will cost around 4,000 rupees, the result comes in about an hour. So if you have to get out of the airport quickly, you have to pay extra and go for the rapid PCR test. But there is a home quarantine. The passengers are allowed to get out of the airport, and then they are advised to go directly to their homes and quarantine themselves for at least 7 days and go for another test on the 8th day. That is being done to keep the Omicron variant in check, and this is mandatory for all the passengers, international passengers coming into India from these at-risk countries, including all of Europe and UK as well. As far as the inside scenes of the airport is concerned, passengers saying that there is lack of social distancing and there are certain issues that the passengers are facing, and because of long queues, it's taking quite a lot of time, and people who have connecting flights from the Delhi airport to other states, many of the passengers have missed the flights as well. So while all these checks are mandatory, certainly there can be certain robust system that can be put in place so that people do not face inconvenience after long flights from all of these nations that have been put in the at-risk category, Gargi.
All right, Akshay, thanks so much for that. And important to note that after testing negative, the passengers can then leave. Let's go across to Sam now. And Sam, what is it like in Chennai? Arrangements have been made for where the passengers arriving from those at-risk countries can sit and wait to get tested.
That's right, Gargi. We compute from the arrival terminal of the Chennai International Airport. We understand they have arranged seats for around 500 passengers at any point in time to wait as the test would go on. This could take up to 5 to 6 hours. In fact, the government has allowed 5 different types of tests. Some of them could be done sooner. And authorities say since this time this only centers around those coming from at-risk countries, they don't expect much chaos. And today the flights from UK have not come. It's not their turn today. So far around 10 flights have come and 70 passengers, we understand, have been are waiting there for tests. And with me, someone who's waiting for the relative or friend who's just arrived. What are you hearing from?
I'm waiting for my sister. Yeah, she's arrived, she's landed, but I'm waiting for her to come out.
Has she spoken to you anything about what's happening inside?
She just called me she's landed. She hasn't told me anything yet.
Where does she come from?
She's coming from Dubai.
Dubai, okay.
Yeah.
She hasn't gone to any of the at-risk...
No. So I don't think she'll be facing any difficulty.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And here again, Gargi, you can see the cars from hotels waiting for passengers, kind of a long queue here. But authorities say 25 international flights come to Chennai every day. And besides food and beverages, they have also arranged for telephone facility and forex services there. So passengers can spend some time availing these services. I spoke to a couple of passengers who were among the first to come out after their testing, and they say they missed their Colombo flight because they were completely caught unawares. They had to take the 10 o'clock flight after landing in Chennai, but since they were stuck in the testing process, they say they missed their flight and they are working on another flight. Authorities have clarified that those passengers who had spent time only as part of their transit at immigration counters in these at-risk countries will not be tested here. And the random testing, again, those passengers will not have to wait for the results. 2% of passengers will be randomly tested. And the moment they get a negative test report, they can leave the airport. They don't have to wait for results of their friends, family members or other passengers who came on the same flight. But at the moment things are okay, and authorities, at least at this point in time, don't anticipate any major chaos as it happened in the month of September. We'll have to wait and watch, particularly tomorrow when flights from cities like London come here with large number of passengers. We'll have to see what kind of a response, what kind of situation would be here tomorrow. Gargi.
All right, Sam. So people coming to India from at-risk countries should check about these new rules that have come into effect since midnight. Now, to detect the Omicron variant of COVID, that can only be done through genomic sequencing. The activity at Mumbai's only genome sequencing laboratory has picked up amidst concerns over this new variant. Mumbai has alerted healthcare staff, and the laboratory is functioning at full capacity to detect the new variant amongst those samples found positive, especially from those arriving from countries of concern. NDTV Saurabh Gupta visited the Mumbai genomic sequencing lab.
The pandemic has been around since March 2020, but how does one find out which variant is causing havoc or which variant is spreading faster, or if there's mutation in the coronavirus since it caused the pandemic in the beginning of March 2020? Now, genome sequencing is the only way to figure out variants, and Mumbai has got its own genome sequencing lab. This was after the pandemic. As you can see, it was inaugurated by the Chief Minister on the 4th of August 2021. And now, of course, the lab is functioning, but it's come into focus now because of the new variant that has been discovered. Tell us a little bit about these machines and how your team here works.
This is a new generation sequencing we have with us.
This is the machine.
Yeah, this is the machine. These two machines we have with us. We at a time we can process up to 376 samples for SARS-CoV-2 sequencing in this. Genome sequencing will tell us all the genes which are present in a particular virus or particular strain of the virus which we are sequencing. So all the genes, whether it is RDRP, so any changes or any mutations are present, that can be identified by the genome sequencing.
In the current Omicron variant, what is this S gene that everybody is talking about? What is this S gene that you're looking for?
Basically, when you look at the COVID virus, the structure of the COVID virus, there are various antigens which are present and various genes which are present. One of which is basically the S gene. We have like similarly RT-PCR genes are there, N gene is there, ORF and AB genes are there. So when we look at this S gene, there are a lot of mutations which are present in the Omicron, and not only the mutations are present, the RT-PCR kits with the S gene are not able to detect this virus. Right. But fortunately in Mumbai and Maharashtra, the RT-PCR kits that we are using do not detect the S gene. So the chances of missing out the Omicron by the routine RT-PCR test is less in our setup.
Genome sequencing is perhaps one of the most important methods of fighting the pandemic, because that gives us an idea of the strengths and the nature of the virus that we are battling. In Mumbai, with camera person Sanjay Mandal, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
Welcome back. In a move to apparently encourage everyone to get fully vaccinated, Kerala's Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan has said that anyone not following the COVID prevention measures like vaccinations will not be provided free treatment. Let's go across to Sneha now for more. Sneha, take us through the details, of this, and what has the reaction been like?
Well, there are mixed reactions to this, of course, from those that have not been vaccinated. That's a different set of reactions that we would be receiving. But largely people have seen this in the picture that needs to be seen in terms of the pandemic. Now, there are, for example, there are two important aspects to this. One, the Chief Minister has said those who are refusing to get vaccinated, whether it be those that are employed with the government, or even teachers in schools or colleges or any others, they will not be treated for free by the government anymore. Kerala has taken a bulk of a load through the government hospitals, especially for the COVID treatment, and especially in the initial phases, and more so even now, and still continue to treat a lot of patients under the government hospitals. Now, Chief Minister has said that will not happen for those who are refusing vaccination unless they provide government certificate that either they have some kind of allergies or some sickness, illness, because of which they cannot get vaccinated. So that being one. Secondly, schools have started. There are around 4,000 to 5,000 teachers across the state who are not vaccinated, this being in schools as well as colleges. And the government has now taken a stand that for the teachers that are refusing to get vaccinated, unless they have a government doctor's certificate, they will have to submit weekly RT-PCR test reports to the concerned authorities. And this, according to the government or the Chief Minister, is basically to keep the safety of students in mind. And of course, all the cost which will be borne for the RT-PCR test will not be by the government, even if they are government teachers. That has to be by the people themselves, because they are refusing vaccination unless they have a government doctor's certification. To give you a larger picture in terms of the numbers that have been vaccinated, Kerala, around 96, a little over 96% of the targeted population has been vaccinated at least once, and around and over 60% of the targeted population with around second dose. So this is where it stands as of now. The government making it strict for those that are refusing vaccination.
All right, Sneha, thanks so much for joining us with that. So the Kerala Chief Minister taking these very firm steps to encourage vaccinations. Well, let's now focus on Parliament and the winter session. After the Rajya Sabha chairman refused to revoke the suspension of 12 MPs, the opposition will continue their protest today as well. The opposition has called the suspension of the MPs undemocratic. Let's go across to Sunil Prabhu for more. And Sunil, today the Congress will be holding another protest outside Parliament.
Just not the Congress. I think all the political parties, all opposition parties will be present. They want their voice to be heard. There's been a point-to-point rebuttal by Mr. Karge through a letter that has been written to respond to what Mr. Venkaiah Naidu said in terms of the decisions that had been taken and his response saying that they will not revoke it. How do they go forward? As we are seeing very unfortunate scenes, Gargi, what the cameras don't show in Parliament. Just a few members of Parliament from the TRS are protesting, yet the House is adjourned. This is in complete contrast to what the government has been saying consistently, that they're ready for a discussion. Clearly, the focus at this stage is to get Parliament to function. Everybody, I think, cutting across party lines, don't want a repeat of the monsoon session. They want a clear focus in terms of legislation to take place. We saw that unanimity yesterday of opposition parties walking out, the government on its part conceding, agreeing not to even pass the dam safety bill without the opposition's presence in the Rajya Sabha. And we'll hope that Parliament gets back to business. People's issues, various matters of concern are raised on the floor of the House and are able to take it forward. But definitely they continue to seek the revocation of the 12 members of Parliament. The government has said if they apologize, they will be ready to revoke that suspension. Those members of Parliament and the opposition leaders say there is no question when they are raising people's issues, especially in the light of the fact that both cons, be it the Farm Laws Bill, where the government did a U-turn, or for that matter, where the Supreme Court intervened in the Pegasus issue, they both have seen a complete, what they call U-turn on both sides, and there is no question of them apologizing at this stage.
All right, Sunil, thanks so much for joining us with that. So the opposition to continue protesting outside Parliament this morning as well. And other news, Captain Amrinder Singh, who launched his own party after leaving the Congress, told NDTV his only condition for an alliance with the BJP was the resolution of the farmers' agitation. And he said that a formal alliance with the BJP can be worked now that the 3 contentious farm bills have been repealed and other issues raised by farmers are going to be discussed. Rubbishing swipes from the Congress that he doesn't actually have MLAs supporting him. He said many Congress MLAs are eager to join him and are just waiting for the model code of conduct to be enforced.
Now you, from what you just said, because you said, you'll also have to keep some seats for the BJP, does that mean, do we assume by that, Captain, that the tie-up with the BJP has been formalized? And if so, why hasn't it been announced?
No, because I was the one who told them that we will only come together once the farmer agitation is over. That was my first, one and only condition, that you finish the farmer agitation first and then we'll get together. And so that is now hopefully over. The 3 bills have been repealed and the other things they want, I think, will be resolved in the next couple of days. So once that is done, then we are open. And I have already met the Home Minister and I have already discussed this issue with him. And I told him that this was the one condition. And then he is quite happy to discuss this issue with me. And I also spoke to the Prime Minister on this. And I also told him that we are all set to work with you. Now, what numbers will be there, I don't know. I can't say now. But we have done a thorough check on our own as to where the BJP is strong, where we are strong, where Mr. Deensah is strong. And then we'll sit across the table and decide on that.
Okay, so there's no hitch or hold up or a problem with the alliance?
No, not from that angle, no. I'm going to hopefully, I spoke to the BJP President also yesterday, and I'm hoping on Saturday I hope to see him.
On Saturday you hope to see him. Captain, what would you say to the fact, I just interviewed the Chief Minister last week, Charanjit Channi. He said that the BJP is a liability in Punjab, and by as in the captain, hitching your wagon to them, you further sunk your own chances.
We know that's a question of perception. Now, that may be Mr. Channi's perception. It's not my perception. I don't think that is the situation. Do you know that as of today, our own feedback is that there is a total swing towards the BJP in there, and there's a great deal of Hindu support, which I'm also getting. So, but combined, there are 36% Hindus in Punjab, and we hope to pick a very major chunk. More than the Congress, let me tell you. That is what I want you to note today, so that these figures are always there with you. Okay. And we are going to draw the big chunk. And then you find that the farmers' agitation, I played such a role in it from the angle, not directly with the farmers, but on behalf of the farmers with the government of India. And they all know it. So hopefully we'll get a lot of farmer support in this. I am in fact making some.
But Captain, certainly the farm laws have been withdrawn, which is of course a huge step. But the farmers are still very much protesting because now they're saying that they want minimum support price to be legalized. So that agitation is still on.
Not legalized. Mr. Tomar has, you see, you can't legalize it. Legalize it means that you pass a bill in Parliament saying that this will be the MSP. But that's not the way it can be done because every year your cost of input is going up and up and up. So your MSP will have to go up too. And that is what the Prime Minister, what they wanted with the PM as Mr. Tomar has announced, that the Prime Minister will be setting up a committee, and in that committee to discuss the MSP, and farmers wanted that they should become members of that committee. And he has said, yes, we will take you as members of that committee.
In other news, the Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, who is on a tour to strengthen the opposition network in the country ahead of the 2024 general elections, met Maharashtra Minister Aditya Thackeray and senior Shiv Sena leader Sanjay Raut on Tuesday evening. The future of opposition and ways to challenge the BJP in 2024 were canvassed at the meeting, a source close to Mamata Banerjee said, and today she will be meeting with Sharad Pawar.
ममता जी आज महाराष्ट्र में आई है, मुंबई में आई है। संजय जी और मेरी उनसे मुलाकात हुई, उनका हमने मुंबई और महाराष्ट्र में स्वागत किया है। पहले से एक दोस्ती रही है। आपको याद होगा 2-3 साल पहले जब ममता जी यहाँ मुंबई में आई थी तब भी हमने उनसे मुलाकात की थी। और एक दोस्ती का नाता, ये जो नाता है, रिश्ता है, वो अलग है और उसी को बढ़ाने, और जब मुंबई में आती है तो स्वागत करना स्वाभाविक है, तो इसलिए हम यहाँ आए। मुझे लगता है कि आज एक हमारी जो बैठक है, जो ऐसे ही उनसे मुलाकात करने आए थे, काफी सारे विषयों पे चर्चा हुई।
In other news, South Africa's Foreign Ministry has said that a full biosecure environment will be created for the Indian cricket team when it lands there for their series next month, and lauded the BCCI for not pulling out its A team despite the panic caused by the discovery of the Omicron variant. India A started their second unofficial test against South Africa A, staying put in the country despite the global trepidation that has followed the Omicron variant's discovery. Now, a special report, World AIDS Day has been commemorated every year on the 1st of December since 1988, and it's dedicated to raising awareness, showing support for those living with the condition, and remembering those who've lost their lives from an HIV-related illness.
December 1st marks World AIDS Day. This day is an opportunity for people worldwide to unite in the fight against HIV. The theme this year is End Inequalities, End AIDS, End Pandemics. India has the world's third largest population living with HIV. It has been 40 years since the first AIDS cases were reported, but HIV still threatens the world. HIV-related stigma exists in one form or the other worldwide, but the stigma that stems from myths and misinformation is the most insidious. It is fear of this stigma and the resultant discrimination that makes people reluctant to seek healthcare services, disclose their HIV status, and take antiretroviral drugs. The majority of adolescents and young people globally do not have accurate and comprehensive knowledge about HIV. But it is precisely that knowledge and education that can make schools safer, healthier, and more inclusive. It is important that women are empowered in decision making. Contraception and safe sex is key to reach the global target of ending the HIV/AIDS epidemic by 2030. Another core principle of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and of the AIDS response is that no one should be left behind. This is also the vision and call to action of this year's Detol Banega Swasth India campaign. The AIDS epidemic cannot be ended without addressing the needs of every single people living with and affected by HIV and empowering every part of our population with the knowledge and the means to stay protected. This World AIDS Day, we must understand that global inequalities affect us all, no matter who we are or where we are from. Let us demand action to end inequalities and end AIDS and all other pandemics that thrive on inequalities.